Welcome to Leading in Tough Times, a webinar led by Gregg Thompson. My name is Julie Henry, Director of Client Services at Bluepoint Leadership Development. Our guide today is Gregg Thompson. Gregg is a keynote speaker, author, and executive leadership coach with a passion for developing the greatness in individuals and organizations. As president of Bluepoint, Gregg leads a talented group of professionals who design and deliver challenging educational experiences that accelerate the development of leaders. Gregg is the co-author of several books, including Unleashed, The Leader as Coach. Welcome, Gregg.
Thank you, Julie. It's an honor to be leading this webinar today. We have a very large audience, which is indicative of the keen interest that leaders have in this idea of leading through difficult times. If you look at the challenge of leading today's organization, it very much is rooted in this idea of ambiguity, uncertainty, and difficulties. People, in fact, crave just the opposite. People, including our leaders, crave certainty, calm, predictable waters. What we look for is something that we can count on, both within the organization and outside of the organization. Sadly, that is simply not the world we live in. The world we live in today, and most futurists would agree that the world we will live in tomorrow will be plagued with even more uncertainty, more ambiguity. This idea of having a predictable world is extraordinarily challenging. Here is at the core for us as leaders, here's the issue. We want to know not what is happening now, we all can see the world today, but what really sits on our minds and really consumes us is what will happen next. And this is magnified when we're going through very difficult times, when the market is choppy, when the demand for our products is going downhill, when our competitors are beating us to the punch. This idea that we cannot control the environment nor predict the future is at the very core of leading through difficult times. It is really the thing that separates and defines a leader in many ways. Think about it. When things are difficult, look at the leaders around you. I believe this really brings out the worst in many leaders. It also can bring out the very best. It's my hope that I can share some ideas with you today here, 8 ideas in fact, that I think will be helpful to you as a leader to prepare yourself to not just survive difficult times and have your organization survive tough times, but actually thrive in these times. The first one is preparing yourself. What I call preparing the leadership mind, yourself, your inner muscle as a leader. One of my favorite quotes is, "Chance favors only the prepared mind." Now that quote is misused often because the word "only" is often left out. Many people use the quote saying, "Chance favors the prepared mind." In fact, it's much stronger than that. Chance favors only the prepared mind. One of the faults that many and mistakes many leaders make is they start to function differently in tough times. They don't prepare themselves internally as leaders for the tough times. The first piece of preparation, I believe, is an attitude, welcoming uncertainty, ambiguity, and change. It's an attitude that looks out at choppy seas and sees opportunity, looks out at tumultuous markets and sees new venture possibilities. When we welcome uncertainty, ambiguity, and change, we prepare ourselves and the organization for the real world that comes. The second way we prepare ourselves as leaders is to tell yourself the truth. This may seem obvious to most listeners, is that, well, most leaders would tell themselves the truth. I differ. I think the ability to be extraordinarily honest with oneself, to stop telling oneself stories you know in your heart of hearts are incorrect, to really look at the world, the organization, the marketplace, competitors, customers, etc., as they are, is a discipline for great leaders. I love this Feynman quote. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. As Julie mentioned, I'm an executive leadership coach, and I can tell you this, a lot of the work that I do with very successful leaders who are looking to make themselves and become even more successful and their organizations become more successful is doing simply this, is to stop fooling themselves and to become honest with themselves about where they're at, what their gifts and strengths are, what their aspirations are. So what are yours? What are your standards? What are your assumptions? What assumptions do you make? What mental models do you have? What are your true beliefs? What are your aspirations? It is by gaining clarity on this that we start to prepare ourselves as leaders of change, leaders who can lead our organizations through tough times. One of my favorite Winston Churchill quotes, people sometimes stumble over the truth, but usually they pick themselves up and hurry about their business. It's interesting, is that what this insight is from Churchill, is that if we truly are interested in the truth, we will be looking for it, and we will deny that part of our brain that rationalizes things, that refuses to look at things. The third element is really based on a saying that one of my former partners used to say. His name was Tim, and Tim was a military-trained officer, went to graduate school after that, became a very successful business leader himself. And he was fond of saying this, officers don't run. And it wasn't a macho statement. What it was a statement that said people are looking at us as leaders all the time. And they are taking their signals from us. They are taking their guidance from us. But not by what we say, but what we do. And it's a way we carry ourselves, our attitudes inside the organization, the ability to project a stable, calming leadership force that really will pervade the organization. The second insight that I wanted to share with you, and I think it's a critical principle, is that all leadership, particularly during difficult times, is a question of character. We are very, very transparent these days. It's the nature of organizations. It's the nature of the visibility in our organizations. And people are judging us as leaders all the time on our character, our integrity. Here's the problem. And if you read a lot of books on managing through change and ambiguity and difficult times, they exhort our leaders to act with integrity, be honest, show your true qualities during this period, show that you believe in your people, show that you're somebody that can be trusted. Here's the problem: it's mostly too late at that time. Our character, our brand has already been established. It is too late to ask others to set the sails when you're about to hit the rocks. I love the old adage that talks about adversity revealing character, because it does. And it's really about the decisions we've made before the bad times hit. So think about it. Who do you put first in the organization? People are judging you primarily on that. Are the decisions that you're making, are these decisions, are they for the good of the members of the organization? Are you putting them first, others? Or do you have a high degree of self-interest? Are most of your decisions very, very based on what is the best for you? Because people are judging us all the time on the basis of not what we say, but what we do, the decisions that we make. So it's too late to start making decisions that will show our integrity, our character, our honesty, our concern for others. When we're in the time of ambiguity, uncertainty, and change, we need to establish that brand beforehand. Number 3, be a trusted communicator. Again, you can read any book on leading and managing through difficult times, and the authors will encourage us to communicate, communicate, communicate. And it is this idea we need to pump more information into the organization. Quite frankly, nothing could be further from the truth. People do not need more information. What they need is meaning, purpose, and direction. Our organizations are littered with information. There's just a nonstop flow of information coming in from many, many sources throughout the organization. So what we really need to do in our organizations is to have leaders who can craft and create this idea of meaning, purpose, and direction. So, as a manager, when you think about what we do as managers and the communication we do, it is critical. There's important things we need to do as managers. So as a manager, and I do separate manager from leader in this particular example here, what we need to do is provide clear, accurate, and timely information that help others do their jobs. And I agree that this is a premium, an absolute premium, and important during difficult times. We call it, in Bluepoint, we call it becoming the trusted communicator. It's communicating that information in a way that keeps people well informed through difficult times. So it starts with the organization news. People are not stupid. People want to be told the truth. What is happening with the organization? Where is our business going? What is, if there's a shift in the size of the organization, what does that look like? When is that going to occur? Then what people want to know is, and they really want to know, is what is the impact on us? The team is still the building block of any organization, either the formal or the informal team. What does this news mean for us? And then, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me as an individual? And regardless of whether or not the leader has all the information, he or she can be assured of one thing. Every individual will make up their own story about what the impact is on them. And so we as leaders have this opportunity to really impact that story. And I'll come back and speak on that in just another minute. So if you shift into this idea of leadership, I've talked a bit about general management as managers, how we communicate to help people do their jobs in good times and in bad. But if you look at this idea of communication, what is our role as a leader? And it really is different. It's really communicating to get others to think differently and to act in concert. It's to create alignment, engagement, commitment. It's to help people not only do their work today, but prepare themselves to do their work tomorrow as well. So leaders tell the big story. The one thing we've learned from the neuroscientists over the last 10 years is that we don't tell stories and think about stories because it's interesting or entertaining. It is the only way people can hear. And people see the world in stories. We see the world in movies. We are actors in our own stories in many ways. So leaders need to be able to tell the big story. The story for the organization, the story for the team, the story for the individual. Now, it might be a story of adversity. It might be an epic challenge. It might be a good versus evil story. It might be a phoenix story, an out of the ashes story. But leaders need to tell the big story, and people want to know their part in that story. And secondly, leaders need to illuminate the short-term pathways. One of the problems with a lot of literature on leadership is this focus on vision. Like, what is our vision? Now, I believe we do need to have the vision. I would rather see it as a story. But what leaders fail to do too often is to illuminate the short-term pathway. Here's what we need to do next week. Here's what the next month looks like. Tomorrow morning when you get up, we need you to focus on this. So this idea of illumination and visioning is important. But in difficult times, people need to know what they need to accomplish over the next week. What is the short-term priority? What needs to occur? And number 4, it's all about the enterprise. Leadership development gurus, management authors are fond of talking about how leaders need to put people first, how human resources are our number one asset. And I'm not going to argue against that, but I believe that the leader's number one job is to help the enterprise survive and thrive. and be very clear about that their number one job is to have the enterprise thrive and survive and thrive. And they do that so that those rest of us in the organization can feed our children, pay our mortgages, save for our children's college. It is this idea that the enterprise serves all of us. Now, sometimes that enterprise is going to be smaller, and that is the way of business. But the leader still needs to make the very best decisions they can in order for the enterprise to continue and to serve all of its members. It's interesting, if you look at any checklist on any airplane in the world, the number one thing that pilots need to do and need to focus on when there's a problem in the air is to keep the plane flying. Now, I share this with you because there's so much happening. There's so much adversity. There's so many distractions during difficult times. Leaders are trying to close deals, trying to manage the cash flow, trying to sort out what their organization is going to look like. It can be an extremely difficult time. My encouragement to you is do not take your eye off the ball. And it's this idea that the enterprise needs to continue. And if you look at leading the enterprise, we need to continue to focus on this idea of value. How are we creating value? How are we presenting value? How are we selling value? How are we executing? How are we delivering value? So once we stop those things, once we constrict the value pipeline in whatever business we are as a leader, we start to lose the source of our profitability, the source of our income, the source of our margin that will fuel us into the future. Number 5 is to swing a sharp sword. I learned from one of my early mentors this idea that if you're going to do something, do it. Make your yes mean yes, make your no mean no. And threatening to downsize the is swinging a dull sword. When we take action that is only halfway, and when we know we need to take a stronger action, when we gradually shrink an organization, when we know that organization is really only going to be half of its size a few months from now, we are really swinging a dull sword. When we work in the marketplace as well, people need to know that if we do something, we do it with all of our might. If we're going to withdraw a product, we withdraw a product and we do it cleanly, and we have good rationale for it, and we do it quickly. If we make a shift in our pricing, we make the full shift, and we go after, when we make that decision, we are committed to the decision, and we don't make it fuzzy. We make a very firm decision. You can tell when you're working with a leader who is fighting with a blunt sword, because it's getting messy around them. Everything is messy. It's non-decisive. You're bouncing off things. You can also tell when you're working with a leader that has that sharp sword, who will make decisions, who will take concerted action. In difficult times, you must be swinging that sharp sword. And within your organization, I would really encourage you to get really clear on accountabilities. And accountabilities for outcomes. Oftentimes we use the term accountability in organizations as a way of, we need to get more accountable around here. You know, it's really a way to find the guilty and find the underperformers. Accountability, when we hold somebody accountable, it's actually a compliment. What we're saying is, you are important. What you do adds value. What you do is important to the organization. It's important to the business. Now, here's the problem, is that many times we hold people accountable for processes. We hold people accountable for a customer service process. Do not hold people accountable for processes. Hold people accountable for outcome. You're not accountable for a customer service process. You're accountable for delighted customers. You're not accountable for a financial reporting system. You're accountable for accurate, timely financial reports. In tough times, you, as a leader, you need to even get more diligent about when you swing a sharp sword inside your organization, you're making it really clear on what specific outcomes every individual in the organization is accountable for. I would also encourage you to look at your own breadth of your leadership and to be thinking about how you lead every day, and if you're really using all the arrows in your quiver. At Bluepoint, we call this the leadership continuum. And so if you look at your leadership continuum, it starts over on the left-hand side here with directing, shifting to advising, to teaching, to mentoring, to coaching. Now, it's our belief that every day leaders are moving up and down this continuum. The however is this, is that often leaders truncate the right-hand end of the continuum. They move away from this idea of coaching and mentoring and teaching and shift very strong to the left-hand side, much to the detriment of their organization. As we move to the right, on the left-hand side, the leader has almost all the accountability. So when you are continuing to be directive and even advising through the periods of difficulty, you are in fact holding in the accountability. So as you shift the accountability to other people, I would really encourage you to put on the mantle of the coach. Most leaders shift the other way in difficult times to become more directive. They become more prolific with their advice. My encouragement to you, hold people accountable and become more coach-like during these difficult times. And number 6, what's mine is mine. Getting clarity about what you own as a leader and what other people own. Sadly, during difficult times in organizations, some people lose their jobs. During difficult times, some people are demoted. During difficult times, some people get shifted in geography and location and organization to places they find less desirable. The empathetic leader needs to understand the impact they have on other people, the impact of these decisions, and the fact that they are in fact making decisions that impact, probably in a negative way sometimes, people's lives. The however is this: you do not own other people's lives, they do. And you can serve other people best when you're really clear on the boundaries between yourself and other people in the organization. What's yours is yours. What you are responsible for is great leadership. Full stop. You're responsible to lay out the best plans possible. You're responsible for creating alignment around those plans. You're responsible for getting people highly engaged in the work, deeply committed, a sense of innovation, a sense of hope and possibility in the organization. That is great leadership. Full stop. You are not responsible for others. You're not responsible for their careers. You're responsible for providing the best opportunity you can. Others are responsible for their careers. You're not responsible for the finances. Every individual in your organization is responsible for their own finance, their own financial security. Now, as leaders, we want to create the most rewards possible in our organizations. But at the end of the day, individuals are responsible for their own security and their own financial future. You are not responsible for the decisions people make. People need to and will make their own decisions about their work, their careers, and their lives. You are not responsible for the performance of other people. You as a leader, as a coach, as a mentor, want to serve people by helping them perform at the highest possible level. At the end of the day, you are not responsible for the performance of other people. And lastly, and this is the hardest one for many of us, is that many people, when they lose their jobs, the negative impact on their families is significant. And I'm not counseling leaders to have no heart for people, heart for the families. The however is this, is that your number one role is to keep the enterprise alive and thriving, and sometimes that will involve some people leaving the organization. I would encourage you to hurt for them, feel for them, do it in the most humane way possible, but also to recognize that your power as a leader comes from you being able to let go of the things that are not on your side of the boundary. And I'm not saying be insensitive. I'm just saying take power, take control, take ownership of the things that are on your side of the boundary. Be empathetic, to other people, be a caring leader, but at the same time be a powerful enterprise leader. Number 7, invite the best from others. It's really interesting. I have been involved in many major restructurings, reorganizations, downsizings, very fast upsizings, major shifts in product, services, and in marketplace over the duration of my career. It's fascinating how infrequently leaders candidly ask for people to give the organization their very best at these times. Interesting. Put yourself in the place of somebody down in the middle of the organization, and you know there's change coming. You know there's snares and landmines out there, and you know that the organization is going to go through a very difficult patch. Think about that. Now think about if a leader in the organization came to you and extended that invite to you. That leader came to you and said, we are facing extreme difficulties. These might be the most difficult experiences and events and challenges that our organization has ever faced. We are facing that. And we need your best game. We need your very best game. And I can offer nothing. I can offer no job security. I can offer no promotions. I can offer no financial benefits. But we need your best game. It is amazing how many people will march into uncertainty and give their very best because a leader has extended that simple invitation. We do all this planning and contingency work in difficult times, often neglecting to extend that invitation, that personal invitation, to every person in the organization. And number 8 is to seize the day. Seize the day. I believe that the world we live in will continue to become more uncertain. The world we live in will continue to shift and change on a daily, on a weekly basis. At Bluepoint, in one of our core workshops called the Leadership Essentials, early on in that workshop, we have our participants select 6 images from their own history. Images that serve as a metaphor for 3 highs in their life or their career or their work, and 3 lows. So 3 of the highest highs in terms of events that have occurred in their work, their career, their lives, and 3 of the lowest, at the deepest valleys for them. And we have them share those in small groups and talk about the lessons that they learned from those events. Every time, the majority of the learning comes from the lows. Now, it's really difficult to accept that and to honor that when you're at the bottom of the valley, when the marketplace is going in the dumper, when your best customers have left you, when you have no way of recognizing how you're going to make the next payroll. Extraordinarily difficult. The however is this, is that all of our research, all evidence tells us that the very best opportunity for you to learn is to learn during the difficult times. And it's the very best opportunity to learn about the most important thing, and that is you. And what are your aspirations? Who are your friends? Who are your allies? Who cannot be trusted? What are your real core values? What are the assumptions you make about businesses? What are the things you're not so strong at? What are you really good at doing? What is the core character that you bring to your leadership? When you look at this idea of leadership and leadership development, self-awareness is at the very core. My encouragement to you is to use these times of difficulty. Use these times of difficulty to really understand who you are, what's important to you, what changes do you need to make in your mental model, your assumptions, maybe even your beliefs that will prepare you for the next chapter as a leader. Great leaders profit from uncertainty, ambiguity, and adversity. We know this. Look back in your industry, your business, your environment, your market, and you will see this, is that every time there's a downturn, somebody wins. There's somebody that finds an opportunity, finds a silver lining, is sitting around picking up diamonds that other people are not doing. And I believe it starts with who we are as leaders and what our assumptions are. I believe there's a breed of leader that sees opportunity in adversity, that believes they can profit from uncertainty. I believe they have an attitude that they manage the downside. I'm not talking about being cavalier. I'm talking about managing the downside, looking at the downside, but seizing the opportunities that others avoid. We call this dynamic leadership. And dynamic leadership is interesting. It's really this idea that we don't know what the future holds. So because we don't know what the future holds, we get our minds clear that uncertainty, ambiguity, change, difficulties will come. So we embrace it. So we prepare ourselves mentally for that. And by doing so, we create organizations that welcome it, not resist it. We welcome change. Number two, we create multiple winning scenarios. If you're a student of scenario planning at all, you'll recognize this idea of strategic planning. A scenario planning is really bringing a strategy alive as a full-blown possibility. But the problem with single scenario planning is we start to fixate on one pathway forward. And the problem with that is that pathway will probably hit a roadblock. And we need to prepare ourselves to have multiple scenarios. If you look at leaders who are successful through difficult times, they will have a multiple of scenarios prepared as they start moving forward. Number three, they always prepare for the unknown. They will assume that they don't know what enemies are going to come at them. They will not know what competitors are going to pop up. They will not know what will happen with some of their key customers. So they prepare for it. And number four, maybe the most important one, is assume you are wrong to some degree. Assume you are wrong to some degree. Create dynamic plans, but assume these plans are wrong. Now, I share this with you because if you're like me at all, you will make a plan, and if you do not make the assumption that it is wrong to some degree, you will subconsciously put away disconfirming information, push off data, information, advice that doesn't confirm and doesn't conform to your assumptions about the plan and the future. The great leaders through these periods, the dynamic leaders, put in place the very best plans possible, and they start marching down that road. But they have the emotional strength to hear disconfirming information. They welcome it. Many of us don't like to hear that we're wrong. And it takes the great leader to step out into the future with this idea that he or she has laid out the best plan possible. But they welcome information that tells them that they are wrong, and they can make adjustments on the road as they move forward. I'd like to share just a final thought with you, and it's this idea of leadership. And one of the things that tends to happen in difficult times is leaders, managers, senior executives tend to make grand proclamations. We send out emails and bulletins and status updates and the like. And we believe, unfortunately, that information lands on everybody the same. Well, it doesn't. One corporate-wide email announcing an organization change can have dozens of different interpretations. People will take that information and create their own story with it. My encouragement to you is to recognize that your leadership happens one conversation at a time. And it doesn't necessarily happen at the annual meetings, doesn't necessarily happen at town hall presentations or team meetings. Most of your leadership will happen in a hallway conversation, in a private meeting in your office, in an ad hoc project check-in. My encouragement to you is to think about this in difficult times and in challenging times. What happens as a result of your conversations? Are people leaving your conversations with a bigger story for the organization? Are they leaving with a clear sense of their part in that story? Are they leaving that conversation with a very clear idea of the outcomes to which you are holding them accountable? Are they leaving that conversation with a sense that in some way tomorrow will be better than today? In some way, there will be more opportunity tomorrow than there is today. Are they leaving that conversation with a sense of self-worth and a sense that even in difficult times, even in uncertainty, even if it's around their own career, that at least somebody cares for them and somebody's hand is on the tiller of the organization? I thank you for your participation in the session today. I'm going to turn the session over to Julie Henry now.
Thanks, Greg. For more information about Bluepoint, we do invite you to connect with us on social media, and we encourage you to visit the resources section on our website for more leadership videos, articles, and webinars. You can find us at bluepointleadership.com. Thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.